the series we're in right now it's this choice. It says my decision to. Every one of these, we get to make a choice. The right choice is making the decision to do the things that we're talking about. Sometimes that's more complicated than others. We've talked about my decision to seek God, and that's where it has to start. But then we follow that up with my decision to listen. So once you seek him and he starts speaking to you, you got to listen to it, and then you have to make a choice. Am I going to do what he tells me or not? Follow that by my decision to forgive. Am I willing to forgive people who have hurt me and maybe hurt me badly? And we have to understand what Christ did for us and use that same forgiveness for others. Follow that up by my decision to submit. And kind of all these kind of fit in that category is, am I going to submit to the things God's talking to me about? Then we follow that by my decision to stop. Sometimes we have to stop and listen and pay attention to what he's telling us and stop doing some of the things that are a distraction. Last week was my decision to give. And for those of you that were here, you got $20. I'm curious to see how all that got to, how you, God blessed people through you with that and how that felt for you. But the whole idea was to have just that feeling and understanding that God may lay that on your heart from time to time. It isn't just the $20 we gave you. It's also the things that God has given you to give to others. You know, a disciple is to be a follower of Christ. And what's that mean? A lot of that is to spend time with him. We have to spend time with him to take on his characteristics because none of us are fully Christ-like. And we're going to hit another topic today, and the topic for today is my decision to serve. And what does that mean? We're going to look at Matthew 25, 14 through 30 to start off with. It says, again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last. Now listen to this last part, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. And then he left on the trip. So he didn't give them more than they could handle. The servant who received 5 bags of silver began to invest some money and earned more. The servant who had received 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. And after a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account for how they had used his money. The servant whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. He used this phrase, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling the small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The servant with the 1 bag of silver came forward and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant, gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back. But the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it. Then he ordered, take the money from the servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. To those who use well, they are given even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw the useless servant out into outer darkness where there's a weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so you have this idea of a good and faithful servant. And what does that mean? And the servant is going to follow the master's plan. He's going to know the master's heart. The first two guys did that. The third guy, I don't think, had much of a relationship with him. He just sat from the distance and saw what the master did, and he was scared of his master. But at the same time, it's not about what necessarily he did. It wasn't about doing more. It was about being connected with the master. Had he understood that, maybe he would have said, okay, what would he do in my place? But he didn't understand him well enough to know what those things would be. I want to caution you, because we're going to talk about serving today. This is not a works-based sermon. There are things that you're going to do that sometimes aren't the desires of your heart even. And those things, an example of that is a few years ago, we broke a water pipe back in this room back here, and it flooded the sanctuary. So phone calls went out. People in the worship team, just anybody. Come, bring your shop vac if you got one. Come help us suck this water up. We want to be ready for service. I think it happened on a Friday. And so Friday and Saturday, people were in here doing that and gluing down tiles back down. And Sunday morning we had service. You couldn't tell anything had happened. So it wasn't just about what they knew to do. Sometimes you step in because you see a need. Another example of not being about performance is with Mary and Martha's story. So in Luke 10, 38 through 42, it says, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he's taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits there while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. And so the idea here is that Mary sat down and wanted to be in his presence. Martha saw all that needed to be done and didn't sit in time with it in his presence and just went and did. But if you think you'd be any different, let me ask you this. If the president of the company you work for or somebody you really highly esteemed was coming to your house and you were going to fix a meal for them, what would you do? You're going to sit there more than likely. You're going to make sure everything's clean. You're going to make sure everything is in its place. It's going to look nice. The food's going to be great. And you're probably going to be all through the meal getting up and making sure everything's ready to go. And you're going to miss the opportunity to be with the person who came to see you in the first place. It's the same thing with Christ. We have to start out in his presence before we do the doing. And sometimes we sacrifice the presence with the doing. But Jesus did a really good job as an example to us. And he showed his devotion to God and God's plan by serving what God's plans were. And we're going to look at today, we've got 4 points. And first one is serve God by spending time with him. And Jesus often went out alone to pray. And in Mark 1:35 through 37, just as a few examples, before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. Later, Simon and the others went out to find him. When they found him, they said, everyone's looking for you. And the idea of this is, think about this. Everybody else thought he should be about doing what he was doing with other people. He was going around healing and teaching, and they thought, hey, you need to be back with the people. But he took the time out to go back to the Father and say, okay, what's today look like? In Matthew 14:23, after sending them home, this is another story, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Again, he went and isolated himself so he could hear from God. In John 8:28 and 29, as an example of this, it says, I only say what the Father tells me to say. I only do what he says to do. And both of those are vitally important. But if you don't spend time with him in the first place, you're not going to know what he's saying. You're not even going to know what he wants you to do. In Matthew 7:21-23, it talks about people who serve and use his name. It says, hey, we prophesied in your name. We healed in your name. We did miracles in your name. But at the end of it, he says, I never knew you. The name, like we were saying this morning, the name of Jesus is powerful, even for somebody who's not in relationship with God. So don't get fooled and think, okay, I see these things, I must be doing it right, if you're not spending time with him. True service is spirit-led. It is not action-based. And again, I'll say this again. It's not your works that save you. Works will be a part of your life, but it's not what saves you. When you spend time with him, you will get direction. You will be equipped to do what he wants you to do. You will get his heart for others. Your desires will change to look more and more like his. If we serve out of our own humanity, our own strength, our own wants, you're going to burn out because you're not getting that refilling, for one. But the other thing is like I talked about earlier, it's pointless. You can do all this stuff, and at the end of the day, if you don't spend eternity with him, what did you gain? Second point is serve God by serving your family. In Deuteronomy 6:4-9, it says, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourself wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home, when you are with them on the road, and when you're going to bed, and when you are getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And the whole point of this is, it starts out with you make the Lord holy. You're the one that has to have that relationship with God first. Then you go about teaching it to your children. We have that responsibility to do that. But you're not going to teach the kids by dropping them off at church every week and letting them get taught at church or even going to church if you're not in relationship with God yourself. And again, I say you can't pawn it off on the church because it's not our responsibility. Our whole purpose is to come alongside you, to help you. How can we assist you in teaching your kids? Your responsibility is teaching the word, but it's also as you follow Christ. They are watching. I don't know how many times I've heard, oh, they're not paying attention. And yes, they are. They see everything, even things you don't want them to see. And you need to be humble enough when you mess up to go, hey, I wasn't a good example to you today. I should have done this instead. Ephesians 5:22-29, it talks about, even for husbands and wives, it says, for wives means you submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. For a husband is the head of the wife as Christ is head of the church. He is the savior of his body, the church. As the church submits to Christ, so wives submit to your husbands in everything. For the husband, this means you love your wives just as Christ loves the church. He gave up his life for her. Do you hear that? He gave up his life. Your wants, your desires for her. Sorry. To make her holy and clean, washed by the cleansing of God's word. And here's the thing I do want to emphasize on this. Sometimes when we see something in our spouse, we want to fix it. And we tell them, according to the word, this is what you should be doing. Here's what the word says. Here's what the word says. And you're sitting there and you're actually not helping. When you think about washing of wounds, think about it as a kid. If you got a small child and they fall and they scrape their leg on the asphalt, what do? You get a washcloth, probably a warm one, and you gently remove the damage that's there. If you go in there and you're just harsh with it, you say, you should have done it. All you did was put stuff in the wound. And it takes longer to heal. It might even get infected. It matters how you do it. Serving God by serving the church is the next point. In Galatians 5:22-23, I'm just going to summarize this. It says, the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We have to have those flowing in our lives in order to serve. You will find it serving difficult to impossible. I'm good. All right. To walk out. Let the fruit guide your service. So you have to be careful, just like if you're back in the kids area. Be gentle, be kind. When you see people in the sanctuary, be gentle and kind. Use those fruits. In 1 Peter 4:10, God has given each of us a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. They are given to us to use. Go back to the servant with the one talent. What did he do? He buried it. He didn't think it was that important. What about the gifts God's given you? Have you buried that talent? Are you actually using it? Serving is not lording over an authority. Sometimes people say, I'm an evangelist. I know one guy in particular is that he was all about, I'm an evangelist. I do this, I do this, I do this. And he just spouted off all this stuff. And he was annoying. I'm just saying. It wasn't that, because he had to announce it to you. You couldn't see it from the way he lived his life. Remember the gift that you've been given, that God gave it to you? You didn't earn it. It's also his. So use it the way he's designed to use it. The last point is serve God by serving your community. You know, Jesus took compassion on those around him. There's a story in Mark 4:35. It goes all the way into Mark 5:21. But it's the demon-possessed man that was in the tombs. And Jesus tells his disciples, he said, hey, we're going to get in the boat and we're going to go to the other side of the lake. So they start doing what he tells them to do, and there's a big old storm comes up. And they got water coming into the boat, and they're getting nervous and scared, and they have to go wake him up. I'm sitting there thinking, hey, if I'm in the boat and there's water coming around on there, I'm probably going to wake up. But he didn't. He was at peace. Calms the storm for him. They calm down. They go ahead and go to the other side. And the guy meets them where they come. Now, this guy was violent. He terrorized his whole community. They had put him in shackles before. He broke out of the shackles each time. He was super strong, and everybody was scared to death of him. And Jesus sits there, and he actually commands the demons to come out of him, because that's actually what was driving his whole body. They come out, they go into the pigs. Pigs jump over the hill and they kill themselves. But the biggest thing was the guy wanted to follow Christ, and he says, no, I want you to go home. Be with your family. And then they get in the boat, because the people didn't want them there anymore. They didn't like losing their pigs. They get in the boat and they go back to the same place they left. So Jesus actually went all that distance. You know, the disciples went through the storm that terrified them just for one person. How many of us would do that? How many of us would even go to our neighbor who's violent or is angry all the time and just be nice to them? In Philippians 2:20 and 21, it says this. It says, I have no one else like Timothy who genuinely cares about your welfare. All the others care only for themselves and for what matter, and not for what matters to Jesus Christ. Think about what he's saying there. Timothy actually cared about them. He wanted to pray for them. He was a part of their lives. But other people were part of that community, but they were all about doing what they wanted to do. They weren't even spending the time, I don't think, to say, okay, God, what do you want me to do in this community? They wanted to do their own thing. Serving is not just about you doing your thing. It's about doing God's thing. And sometimes that's hard. Again, it goes back to submitting. In Philippians 2:2-4, it says this, "Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and one purpose." Now, here's one thing I have noticed in the secular world, is when you're busy and you got a mission to do, people don't complain. They don't have time to. Worked for Garrett Aviation. We got the aircraft in on Mondays. First shift went out and did the test runs. Second shift took the engines off. And then we all sit there and would work on that engine. That was your engine for the week. You tear it down. You'd get it inspected. You'd fix whatever needed to be fixed. You'd put it back together. And then you put it back on the aircraft and to go out and do test runs again. Point being is it was very fast-paced. You had to keep busy. You had to keep doing what you're doing. What I found is that when people aren't busy, they start complaining. They start nitpicking everything instead of just doing their job. Same thing can happen in church. If you're not on mission and you're not serving in some capacity as far as to make sure things, and that can be anywhere from just being nice to people on Sunday to serving back in the kids area every couple of weeks. It's important, and you probably will find yourself not complaining as much. At US Air, we had aircraft that would get in at 9 o'clock at night. We had to get it back on the gate by 7 p.m. I worked third shift. And the point being is the company allowed us to play volleyball if we got the airplane to the gate sooner. You know those people that slacked off and didn't do their job? You helped them. You had a goal. You wanted to play volleyball. And at one point, a guy actually broke a step on somebody else's foot and snapped his ankle. It's pretty gruesome. But point being is they wouldn't let us play volleyball anymore. And you know what happened? People stopped working with each other. Oh, that was your job. You get it done. I'm not helping you anymore. Be careful of that, okay? When we're on a mission as a church, pay attention to what your part of it is and do it. So how can I be a better servant? One thing is, going back to what Jesus' example is, you have to see others around you. If all you can see is yourself and what you want and what you desire, spend time with God. He will change your heart. In Matthew 25:34-39, then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For when I was hungry and you fed me, I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me." Then these righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? Or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And just this idea of, hey, when you're doing it to other people, you're actually doing it for me, and people see me through those actions. We continue on, and it says, "And the king will say, I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, your brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." But then the king will turn to those on the left and say, "Away, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons." Notice it was prepared for the devil and his demons, not for people. "For I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison and you didn't visit me." Then they reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick in prison and not help you?" And he will answer them, "I tell you the truth, when you refused to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, You were refusing to help me. Again, just that idea is you have to see people around you. In James 2, 14 to 18, it says, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say I have faith, but you don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say goodbye and have a good day and stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. It is dead and useless. Now, some may argue, but some people have faith. Others have good deeds. But I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have any good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. Again, it goes back to the idea that if you spend time with Christ, he will give you stuff to do, and there's going to be things he's going to ask you to do. It's going to take extreme faith to do. A great example to me of this is a waiter. We've all had good ones. We've all had bad ones. But what does a good waiter do? A good waiter, their goal is to give the customer the best experience that they can have. When they see your drink getting a little bit low, they're going to come fill it, as Scott says, all the way to the top. They're going to see you, maybe you dropped a fork. Oh, no, let me get that. I'll get you another one. They're going to be on top of everything. If something happens, if you spill a drink, they're going to be there with napkins and get things cleaned up. And they're not going to be angry or frustrated with you. But you know they didn't get that way on day one? They had to be trained. A lot of times you'll see wait staff being trained by somebody else, and they're following them around, seeing what they're doing. The same thing can be said about serving. How do you get to be a better servant is by being around those people that serve well. Some practical steps. Be intentional and observant. Surround yourself with other servants. Learn by watching and serving with others. So when you're serving with others, see what they do. See how they interact. Let go of your own agenda and follow God's plan. And that one is going to be tough at times. Because sometimes you're going to want to go do your things. I got plans. And God's going to say, I actually need you to do this. Hugh is a great example. Hugh comes in, first thing he does, you see him out there in the parking lot. If there's any trash in it, he's going to pick it up. If he sees any sticks, he's going to put them in a nice little pile up under the trees, get them out of the roadway. He sees dust in some of the lights. He goes and gets the duster and does it. I've never once asked him to do that. He comes in the building, and he's ready to serve when he walks onto the property. My parents, actually, when we were kids, we actually cleaned the church once a month. And so our duty as kids, we had a dusting duty that we did, and we had to go I think we did the balcony and stuff. But it was a 3-floor church. And point being is every Saturday, we knew that's what we were doing. And my parents showed us how to do it, and we watched them do it. They did it well. We were taught to do it well. The Milo kids. When we have a work day, you want to learn how to serve? Come watch them. Drew sits there and tells them, okay, this is what we're going to do. All right, they go do that. He says, all right, no, we're going to do this. And it's just, you watch those kids, and they do it with enthusiasm. Because they've been taught it's actually a joy to serve. You know, when Jesus actually drew people to him as far as the way he served. He met the needs of those that he came in contact with. If your reputation is that you care for people, that you take the time to listen to them, because you legitimately care for them, it's just not a surface, hey, I'll go say hi to this person. Word is going to get out. And you'll find yourself being able to serve even more people simply because a showing of kindness, a showing that you listen to them. It's a big deal. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world right now. People are hurting. We talked about it in the songs today. And Pastor Scott says, I know there's people that are hurting in different areas. In this room, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Be willing to see people that are in need. Come alongside them. You don't have to fix them. Let God fix them if there's something that needs to be fixed. But sometimes all they need is a kind word. Sometimes it's a hug. Just not for my wife. Sorry. She will shy away from that. Sometimes it means letting go of what you like. Where do you get your value? Right now, I'm having to give up the facility key. I don't like that. I love to work with my hands. I love to create things. Scott will ask me to say, hey, I want to get this. What do you think about a sermon illustration for this? Usually it's Saturday or sometimes Sunday morning. But my point is this, is to be able to go and do something, even on the fly. I do that real well, or fairly well. I like I say, I like to fix things. I like to do all that stuff. And I'm having to hand that off. Not necessarily because I can't, because I'm being called a different direction. Don't get so stuck on what you do for God that He can't change it. Sometimes it's only a momentary change, and sometimes it's a long-term change. You just never know. But to do that, I've got to have a kingdom mindset and not a Chris mindset. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes. The only way you're going to be able to do that is spending time with Him. You notice we keep saying that phrase, spending time with Him. It's important. If you think you can do it by coming in on Sunday morning and that's all you get, you're going to struggle. Spend time in prayer with Him. We spoke earlier about the parable of the talents and the servant who buried his. That's a big deal. Did you see what the results of that were? How would you like to get to the end of your life and find out that, oh, I knew I should have been doing this all along and I didn't. And you've actually got no relationship with Jesus. The consequences of that is an eternity in hell. That's a big deal. Pay attention to what He's speaking to you. By following Christ and becoming a disciple, it involves actively serving others. As we grow closer to Christ, we will naturally find ourselves drawn to serving others just as He did. It's not on day one. Learn to grow in it. Learn to sit there and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do today?